Look forward to going through a little bit more of the downswing. Again, if you don't know me, my name is Mike Dixon, out of the DC area. Work at Little Bennett Golf Course, which is ran by Montgomery County Revenue Authority, Montgomery County Golf, up in Clarksburg. And trying to go through and just make a little bit more clarity on how our body is influencing our motion. And when we go through and we look at YouTube, there's a lot of great information, but we need to be able to sift through what's important and what applies to us. I would say I tried to do the wrong thing for 25 some years and have a better understanding why I struggled trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do. So that's really where we want to start to try to get some answers for you as a player. How do we get better? How do we control the ball? How do we improve our ball contact? How do we hit it farther? All of those pieces are going to come down to how we grip the club, how you sequence the backswing and the downswing to really promote, again, a solid, repeatable, consistent motion into impact. So I'm going to try to angle this down a little bit more, I think. It does. There we go. All right. So where we left off last week, we were talking again about grip type. We got the BioSwing Dynamics with Mike Adams, E.A. Tischler, Terry Rolls is a part of that team too. A lot of instructors are, I would say, using their information to have a better idea how to help fix golfers faster. In particular, when we start talking about grip type and your pivot and how those start to match and link up. Again, matching your sequence. I think that's what I find most of the time where people get in trouble is their grip doesn't match how their body's trying to move. So we got to make sure which one's right. Is the grip wrong or is the sequence incorrect? So we were talking about tracing the baseline, getting this little bit of our golf machine additive in there. So we kind of mix a little bit of both. So you will hear some different terminology between the golfing machine and going through and explaining some of that. And then also, again, grip type, side under, side cover, side on, center pivot. Again, little right balance stuff that kind of blends in a little bit with what the BioSwing Dynamic stuff does. I think the one thing that I find, especially with a lot of players, is again, we get fed that we need to have a one-piece takeaway, create separation, maximize this X-vector stretch. And for me, that's what like literally is my kryptonite. If you tell me as a front post player, my hip wants to engage my takeaway, that's like kryptonite. I can't find where my hands go. I have no idea where my arms are going to track to. So really making sure that that sequence pattern for you is going to work. And this is where when I start talking to players as they go through and we start learning more about how their body's supposed to work, they're like, I used to do this one thing and I played really good golf there. Okay, well then maybe there's something there. So start kind of looking at your swing instead of saying that you can't do something. Try to look at more as why am I doing that? Again, backstroke, staying on plane, really important. Again, last week we talked about trying to trace the laser and using the alignment stick for my baseline, which is my orange sticks here on the ground. Again, the baseline is the base of the plane. Anything that I'm going through too, what I love about Golf Live is you can always go back and rewatch all the previous sessions. The first session was kind of a little bit short because I thought I was almost out of time. But other than that, every session you can rewatch. And eventually, I think we're going to be able to upload the PDFs of the slideshows as well. So try to just get a little more information out to help people get better. Again, watching club face position, I'm really adamant. Again, I'm going to use my monster club here. I I want to try to control the club face as much as I can when it's moving the slowest or when it's not moving at all. So really cognizant about trying to get my setup where I got the club face square, not closed, not open up here before I even set it down. I find a lot of times players mess up when they are looking at the leading edge. So instead of using the leading edge, I try to use the line. So you can see here, I kind of have like a piece of yellow tape on my club face here to try to match that. So like if I go into my backswing and I go back to here, you can kind of see that yellow tape is trying to match my spine angle. I don't want that club to be toe up and I don't want it to be face down. I used to think people that they train themselves to do that. Now, some people do because the grip is wrong. Maybe they got too much of a strong grip and they're not supposed to. And in the backswing, they twist it open. But I've started to believe that the hands know where they need to go and how they're supposed to load. And that's why this club face starts twisting and doing weird things in the backswing, especially in the follow through. So if I go through and I have my old interlock grip, if I come through here and I just swing, and this is just how my hands naturally want to go, you can see how left that toe is. Going through and starting to understand like where that is and how we're controlling the face is going to be really important. So we're always talking about club face control. Again, that's always going to be grip. That's one of the things I'm always paying attention to and trying to watch. Watching the wrist positions and watching at the top of the sling, going through. 1 second here. Let's make sure. Some setups. Again, we got our wrist conditions through golf machine. So if I'm a right-hander and I turn my hands to the right, I roll my hands to the left. Here, my hands are vertical to the ground. Okay, I can arch my wrist, bend my wrist. Here, my wrist is flat. Okay, and then I got uncocked, cocked, and then level. So again, medical terminology, that's fine. I'm not a doctor. I don't know them. I know that if my right hand goes one way and my left hand goes the other, they're opposites. So in golf machine, simplest turn, roll. But when we go into the backswing, if I go up to the top and I want to make sure that my left wrist is flat, my right wrist is bent, my left wrist is cocked. So like though, again, like those are simple things. You can see how that club face is matching my lead wrist. So when we start to do this golf swing coming down, that's going to be really important. So we're trying to go through and trying to build on top of all these blocks that we started with. Again, started at our setup, going through our whole routine, and starting to really start to understand when Mr. Kelly said a flat left wrist, he wasn't necessarily referring to like a visibly flat left wrist. And I think that's the problem with a lot of players is number one, we walk in with our thumb down the center and that left wrist is really flat. I need that left thumb to be slightly to the right of center, right? So we draw our little dot on the middle of the webbing of our hand, which is in line with our anatomical snuff box. I can see my two knuckles. But from here, when I go into my impact position, you can see how nice and straight that is. Now, my wrist does not look straight, but it's geometrically in line. That's our left flying wedge. So my left arm flying wedge, that's keeping it in line. I never want that to be out of line. I never want it to be here, like arching my wrist too much or bending through impact. So again, club face control. If I want to control the golf ball, I got to control the club face. Ideally, we can control the club face, control the club shaft, control the club head. We'll be in business. So we're going to get into the 3 to get down. So we had 3 to get ready, 3 to get up. Now we're on our 3 to get down. And I think that the most interesting thing when listening, this is probably where I'm getting. Can you hear me on that? Yeah, there's definitely some feedback. Let's mute that. Sorry about that. I don't know where's the feedback coming from? Okay. Sorry. Again, by week like 6 or 7, I'll probably have this down. Um, I know what it is. It's the volume is turned up on my phone. There we go. I thought I heard myself talking a little bit. Okay. So on the start down, and what I would tell you, this is probably the hardest move and the most misunderstood move. Um, Again, you hear it explained different ways. Um, for me, I've heard it from different people. Again, I would say Tom Watson, he talked about how he wanted his right shoulder to replace his left shoulder in the downswing. Again, trying to make sure staying in the spine angle. He said that was the secret to golf. And it probably elongated his career. Um, you got Mike Romatowski with Super Sphere Mach 3 speed down in San Antonio. Good friend. He talked about how he was watching the rib cage of these best players, and they went from being, again, think about like stripes on my shirt, my rib cage, like how quickly the rib cage tilted and went up. Homer Kelly talked about how at the top of the swing, this is our turn shoulder plane. The right shoulder worked down the turn shoulder plane. And then there's like a thing in Golf Digest where Tiger Woods said he felt like he was throwing an uppercut punch. Now, all those are involving the shoulder. Now, if I go up to the top of my swing and I just try to ring a bell, my shoulder doesn't move. So that's where like I had like this misunderstanding of like what's going on. And I feel like this is where a lot of people kind of get lost. So again, shameless plug. My personal invention is called the Lag Master. But the whole goal of this thing was to get people to understand, number one, where am I at the top? Am I like not cocked too far? Again, like this doesn't let me go too far. But it was more to get where when I get up to the top of my swing, it was about the sequence and how my body was moving first. So when we start looking at some of the movement patterns of the different grip types, right? So we got our low core. Now, low core, what I would actually do is for the Lag Master, I would get you set up a little bit more where it's on my shoulder blade, not necessarily my shoulder, because you can see how that club is actually kind of laid off there. Okay. So from here, I can't just pull down. Again, if I pull down or I just spin, that club's coming down over the top. So we're going to the top and I'm going to rock forward. So I'm getting up to the top, and this is where everybody feels this different. I think there's a great video of Colin Morikawa, and he was talking about how Tiger Woods was trying to communicate something to him. And he's like, I'm not going to feel it the same way as Tiger. And that's like, that's everybody. That's the hardest part of my job is to try to make where you have the understanding. I have to have it 7 different ways so that you can get it. Okay. See what we got. I can't hear any feedback. Oh, okay. That's good. It is pretty far away. So I'm glad that you guys can hear it. It annoys me, my ADD. But when we start looking at this side under grip, again, we got our side under strong right hand grip, and we're going to get up to the top. Typically, the trigger is going to be more of a lateral shift, right? So, like, again, Mike and Terry and EA, they kind of coined it off of shot putting, where there's a glide, there's a spin, and then there's a launch. All 3 different ways to use the ground. So this one's going to be a little bit more of glide and spin. So we're getting loaded up back over to our right leg. I would stress too, like when we start talking about our head, don't think so much about the head, but think about like the center point right by your neck in between your shoulder blades. That's really the center of the swing. If I drew a line from my nose and I go up to the top, that line would be right on that spot of my neck. I'm not, again, to me, this is a sway. I don't want to drift too much off the ball, but I am going to load into my trail leg, going to shift over here. So again, like I can push off my right foot, my right hip can slide. I can go to the left. Um, for low core, the one visual that I like to give them is if I had a balloon in between my elbows, I'm going to try to squeeze that balloon with that trail elbow. And that's what you can see how that shallows that club coming more end out. Um, and again, the tendency is when that club gets across the plane for the low core, it usually starts to get them into that reverse tilt, which is as soon as we go into that reverse tilt, it's almost impossible to recover from that. And I would say if you have a pressure plate, again, like I've got a swing catalyst here, um, typically the side under golfer, they're loading more into their trail leg. I would say somewhere in 70 to 80%. Again, I don't like putting numbers on things, but usually they have a lot more pressure into their trail leg. Um, you can get into the side on. So this is the one where, again, everybody loves side on, like neutral grip. So like kind of like we're shaking instead of our side under. Here our hands slightly angled, side on, side cover, and then we got top and then under. So there's this kind of 5 ranges. So again, they're not all set, but when we get into that side on, and the one way that I would test that was again take my grip, and for me, if I go side under, you can just kind of watch my club here. If I swing this, you see that club face is twisting very, very quickly. I feel like it's shut completely at the ground. So if I get my grip even more side on, I still feel it's shutting. You can still see that's closing a little bit too much. So that's just where my trail hand is more of a side. I'm a side cover golfer. And I just feel like that's way more stable. The club face isn't shutting as fast. But so again, so that's an easy way to test that. For that side on golfer, we didn't talk about extension for the side under golfer because I think in their swing, they're trying to get extension here. So they're actually like, I feel like there's actually 3 different places where we're feeling this extensor action. So in their early set, they want to feel like they're getting here. Because if they get into this way, this is where the club's going to get stuck and it's going to cross the plane. So they kind of feel a little bit of a reach right here, right? Just trying to stay a little wider. For a like side on, I think they feel that a little bit more at the top, right? So they're getting all the way up to the top. And again, like that's that classic club parallel to the ground. It's going to usually be a little bit more parallel to the target line. This is going to touch their shoulder a little bit more. And again, they're going to be able to use, typically, they're not going to have a lot of sway because they're around probably 65% in their trail leg. But they get up to the top, they're going to have a little bit of shift, but definitely a lot more push and spin. Again, so like each swing type is going to use the ground differently. And I kind of liked how, again, Joe Plucker was kind of demonstrating this at the last Top 100 Summit. And Mike talks about it too, is if I put my hand in a certain position, you can see where that's going to go. So if I put my hand here, you see if I was pushing something, I'm going to push it lateral. If I put my hand here, I'm going to push it and I'm going to push it around. If I put my hand more here, I'm pushing it down, right? And again, as a side cover, I always got crushed for coming out of my posture too early. I didn't really like go to the ball. I came up out of my posture. I understand why now because I was using the ground or trying to, but everybody's trying to tell me not to. So I think, again, this side under big things we're going to have is they're going to be 50-50 with their weight at address, 65-70% up into the top. And head's going to probably stay a little bit more centered. And we're feeling a little bit more extensor action at the top of the swing. And then in the downswing, when we start to get to that part too, is like where the elbow is going to link up. So Hopefully I'm not going too quick for you guys here. Now the side cover. Again, this is when I have someone who comes up to me and it's a side cover, I'm just like, welcome to the Cool Kids Club. Um, we get told everything that we do is wrong. But when we start to look at how we're using the ground, right? So this is where, again, like as a rear post golfer, I would take my rock shot here. And again, I love rocker plates. Sometimes I think when the ones that are like a teeter totter, I kind of want my head to be a little bit more stable. I created this because I've always used the analogy of a pitcher in baseball would never put the foot on the outside of the rubber. They always want to be able to push off the inside of the rubber. So like, again, so as a low core, we're pushing off this trail foot. And usually, again, the knee and the hip, again, load bearing joints are going to get over top of each other. Now, as a front post player, the cover, I'm actually going to put this on my front foot. So I got the ball of my foot just slightly on the mat, but like my toes are off the mat and on the plate. My heel is definitely not on the plate. So what's going to happen here is we're going to go up to the top. Again, we're going to have a little bit more knee kick. My heel's going to kick in. I'm going to stay a little bit more over my torso. I feel that we have our extensor action before we start to swing. So you got one golfer that has their extensor action in the takeaway, one golfer that has their extensor action at the top, and then one golfer for me, I'm having my extensor action before I start the downswing. And then I'm going to push in this left leg so I can push up out of it. Again, when we go in and start talking about the golfing machine, Homer referred to the fact that we had two different ways to move the club. We can either push it or pull it. And again, like when we say pull, I'm getting up to the top. I'm not just pulling with my left hand. You can see how like that's not going to, what's happening. I'm pulling with my shoulder. My shoulder and my hip are pulling my left hand, which in my left arm, which is pulling the club to create that centrifugal force down at the bottom to create that speed. That's fine if you're, again, a swinger. I'm more of a hitter. I want, in my opinion, more right shoulder. And I think that's where, again, Tiger talked about throwing an uppercut punch. I think he was trying to get that right shoulder more into it this way, driving through. And I'm still maintaining lag. I'm still not early releasing. Usually if I start seeing that early release, which we're going to talk some of the faults, typically there's reasons for that. It's always typically starts with a grip. Okay. So we got that. So common errors. So if I go into the top of my golf swing, I'm just going to grab a normal club here. And if I go up into the top of my backswing, in golf, we love really sophisticated turns. So we're going to talk about forward bend. So if I'm just bending my body forward and forward bend, this is called spine tilt, right? So I'm tilting back. So if I go into bend, let's say we're going to have about 30 to 35 degrees of forward bend. If I kept all that bend in my backswing, I would look like this. And my head just moved probably 1.5 feet. I can't do that. But what we can't do is we can't go into negative forward bend, also known as this reverse spine tilt or negative tilt. As soon as we go into this reverse tilt, number one, you can see how the club looks like it's kind of like going past parallel. If I fix that, the club's actually in a good position. But when I go into this reverse tilt, the only thing I can do is either, I got one to two options, to be honest. I can pull my arms down, but most of the time it's a spin. So I go into this reverse tilt and I just spin and come out and over the top. So that is like one of the first things that if I'm looking at someone who's spinning out at the top, it's like, okay, why are you spinning and why does your body feel like that's the only thing that we can do? We can't shift. Again, early release. Why would we want to early release? Well, when we call it a sweep release. So if I get up to the top and I throw the club, right? So we're throwing it away. That is actually a squaring action. Look how close square that club face is. Somehow our mind knows that and brain figures that out. Now, if my grip is too weak and I go up to the top of my swing and the club face is open, I'm going to have to try to find a way to square the face. So I don't find casting is, again, it's not the problem. It's trying to fix the problem. So usually it starts with looking at the left-hand grip. I do find that side unders tend to cast a little bit more because they cross the plane and they're out of sequence. Again, another thing is the rock foot, the trail foot rocking out. So if I put my rocker plate down here and I put my foot right in the center of it, I don't want my foot to rock out. You can kind of see how my knee kind of buckles out. I'm trying to keep my knee, again, I'm loading these load-bearing joints, ankle, hip, knee, so I can drive off of that and be powerful with my lower body. Again, arms pulling down or lead arm pulls. We talked about the left arm acting as a rubber band last time. Again, when I get up to the top of my swing, if I go this way, like I'm not pulling down. If we look at the kinematic sequence, and again, like we have these like really fancy charts and you can get sensors put all over you. And I would go forth and saying like most sports, they all have the same sequence pattern. So most of the time, like KVS is one that golfers use a lot. There's several others now. And again, I think there's one you can even use on your phone now. Sports Fox AI, Toyo, blanking on a name, which is a great option. Again, like it's markerless, it uses your camera, but there's going to show a sequence of the body. And again, it has to start with the lower body, then the trunk, right? The torso, arms, then object. So when I start hearing people say the arms start the downswing, I don't, again, pressure precedes movement. So like in my head, if I'm getting ready to start running, I don't, again, we're all on a 100-meter dash. We're going to start running. I've never seen anybody start pumping their arms before the gunshot, right? Like they start running and then their arms are pumping. So your feet are always leading. Your hands are always trying to catch your feet. Try to think of it that way. So my favorite thing is people are like, oh, I swung too fast. And I'm like, don't think about your arms swinging too quick. They're out racing your feet. We need to speed up the weight shift. We need to speed up the body and how we're maneuvering, how we're shifting. And then again, going into that negative of tilt, usually when we start going into here, we're going to have a lot of attack angle. So if you have a tendency to hit down on the ball too much, pop up your driver, you're probably looking at something with the negative tilt. All right, so start down waggle. So again, this is where we were talking about the side on and side cover, feeling a little bit of stretch here. So you can kind of see how like I'm kind of pushing my hands out, but I'm not doing that with my left arm. I'm not trying to keep my left arm tense. My left arm's a rubber band. My right arm, if I come back into here, my right arm is what's stretching that left arm. So when we get up to the top, I want to kind of feel like almost like I'm kind of doing opposite actions. I'm kind of going this way, right? So I'm pushing as I'm trying to shift to the left. Okay. Remember I was teaching the guy, he said he's a heading coach. And I'm just like, yeah, like you guys step. In golf, we don't step. He's like, actually, Mike, we step and we turn back now. I guess, again, like I want to say Ted Williams taught that. Bryce Harper, I know he does that. Like his hips actually load back before he steps forward. But when we start talking about that extensor action, that is why when we look at our grip, again, there's 4 key pressure points. I don't think we've talked about this, but the number, we'll start with number 4. Number 4 is my left arm on my left pec. So when I go to the top and I'm doing the start down waggle, that's where that left arm is kind of kind of smushing my left pec. And this is where, for the ladies, we want the left arm on top, right arm onto the side. We don't want them both on top, and we don't want both to the side. So we want left arm on top, right arm to the side of the right chest, because your left arm is going to have to track up and across your chest. So we're getting into that pressure point. So that's number 4. Number 3 is all the pressure that goes into our pointer finger. Mr. Jeff Evans, he's got the Pro Striker, I think is what it's called. Really cool little tool, goes on the grip, and again, we're putting pressure into that shaft. But when I'm going into there, that's where all that pressure is into that pointer finger. And you look at BJ Singh, the only finger on it at impact is his pointer finger, his trigger finger. So that's why that trigger finger, we kind of want to, again, we're not gripping like baseball. We kind of want to get like a little bit of a stretch. I don't want it to be too drawn out. A little bit of a hook, right? A little trigger finger action. Number 2 pressure point is the one that everybody usually knows from Mr. Hogan, is underneath the heel pad. So if Mr. Hogan said, if you have it underneath the heel pad correctly, you can keep this club up with just your pointer finger. If you get it into the wrong spot and you go like that, it's going to slip out. So that's our number 2 pressure point. But the number 1 pressure point, and again, when Homer did this, you would think he would put it in order in how the club and the hands went onto the club. But he put them in order of importance, not in order in how they went on the club. So when he goes through and he starts talking about number 1 is the right hand on the left thumb. Now I want you to take a really close look at this. Kind of looks like that thumb's just meant to sit right in that crease of my throw hand. Now, what we don't want to do is we don't want to get our thumb up underneath the right heel pad. That starts to mess with our right forearm flying wedge when I'm coming down into impact. I can't get my shaft of the club in line with my forearm. So really make sure that the pad of your right thumb is sitting on that knuckle. And again, that's what's going to give me the ability to create this width. And the one thing I talk about with players is when we look at the best players, there's an order into how they create width. Okay, so I want you to think about this for a second. So in their backswing, they get really wide. Okay, and then their downswing, they get really narrow. And they get really wide in the follow through, right? Those arms are really long and then they come up and around. We look at everybody else. We get really narrow. We get really wide. And we have to get narrow again, right? The classic chicken wing. So that extensor action, and this is one of my favorite drills. Probably did it again. Probably, I think, on this is called acquired stroke. So I got my good grip going into my setup here in good posture. And all I'm going to do is going to come back to that right forearm parallel to the ground and just trying to hit this shot. And notice how the toe of the club is vertical to the ground. The club head is outside of my hands. If I flipped it, the club would be here. My hands would be showing. You can see that really well on the screen there. This is like one of my favorite drills. I call it the bunny slope drill because this is just where I want everybody to try to start. Okay. Now, when I'm doing this drill, what I would tell you is I want to try to feel a little bit of that extensor action feel in that backswing. So I'm going to go back, stretch, and turn down and through. Okay. So when we get into our ball flight control in our pitching, we're going to start talking about how we're going to draw this ball and how we're going to fade this ball. But I love this drill. I would usually do it with more of a like pitching wedge, something short. I'm not looking for a ton of distance and power. Ball should kind of start out with a little, start out to the right a little bit, have a little draw to it. And again, if I needed to add power to that, I don't necessarily have to add length to the swing. I can add velocity, right? So I'm going to add speed. and I'm going to go through. Now, for me, when I'm doing that drill, what I like people to do is I want them to figure out where do they feel like they're generating that speed. I generate the speed from my arms. Being more of an upper core player, my arms are where I'm going to get my speed. Lower core typically is going to be from their lower body, mid core. Again, like it's kind of crazy. They kind of say they feel it from their abs. So just different, unique. Again, like everybody's a little different with what they're doing. But when we start looking at again different drills, you can do the step drill. That's another great drill. So we'll do that one real quick. Again, like I would do step drill here, but as I was stepping, I would be pushing back. So it's almost kind of like two different actions, and then I'm going to come through. You can see where I'm getting into that really good impact position where my hands are leading, and again, ahead of the club down at impact. And sequencing it up, that's the one of the hardest things. So downstroke. So downstroke's the halfway down point. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. When we're using again, you got a bunch of different ways to measure the ground. I am a fan of the Swing Catalyst and Sensor Edge. I've had it for probably a good 7-8 years. But what we start to find when I first got it, I think this is kind of like a TrackMan. When TrackMan first came out, everybody thought we had to be a 0-0, right? 0 pass, 0 face. That's how we had to be. And we kind of start learning that there's a pattern, and everybody's patterns are different. And again, we're going to if I have more path, I need a little bit more closure of the face. And what they're finding now is the more of the different type of golfer you are, we're going to peak different things, and we're going to use different things. Now, again, I don't have a 3D plate, so I'm not measuring lateral and rotational, unfortunately. If anybody wants to donate one, happy to take it. But mine does measure verticals. And the one thing that I'm going to see with a vertical for a low core player is when they get down to about this point in their downstroke where the club is parallel to the ground, right? Club face is square, but club is parallel to the ground. Hand above the club looks like it's kind of sicking in my right thigh. That's usually where they're going to peak their verticals. The other thing, again, because that hand is slightly under, that elbow is going to get slightly in front of the body. I kind of like to think about the seam of the shirt, trying to get the elbow in front of the seam of the shirt. I don't have to get in front of my belly button. That starts to kind of get this club in a weird spot. But again, trying to get it where I'm just in front of the seam of the shirt, and that club is going to kind of still be back and through my forearm a little bit there. Again, the laid off position, like we talked about, helps shallow the swing, and they're going to use more lateral and then rotational in their swing. They can use some verticals. It's not very typical that I see that. Again, if they do, they're going to be crushing it. And side on, weight shift, similar to the downstroke for the side under. They're going to be triggering it with a movement to the left. Again, they're not super over into the right side, but they're still going to have a little bit of a move and coming back down. The elbow is going to be coming on to the side of the seam of the shirt. And again, so it's not this way. It's going to be just right on the seam of the shirt. So almost linking up. I want to say Mr. Adams calls that arm linkage. And max vertical is going to be usually about left arm 45-degree angle to the ground is what I kind of watch when I see that. So pushing in the foot, and then again, they're going to use a little bit more vertical and rotation because they didn't get way over to the right side. They don't have a lot of glide. They can have some, but usually it's going to be more of a rotation and a push for them. Knee for a side cover in the downswing. And getting back into my pressure plate here. My belief now, when we look at, like we talked about in the backswing, a low core, like rear post golfer, they're going to have max knee bend at the top of their swing. Why? Because they need to be able to push out of this trail leg. Okay. Now, as a front post player, something that I did and again, ever liked was I would always get up to the top of my swing and my trail leg would straighten. I don't want to lock. There's definitely a big difference between the leg straightening and locking. But when I did that, what I always thought it was wrong, but I'm going up to the top because what's happening is that keeps me center, but it also gives me where I can jump and push out of this lead leg. Like if I go into here, like I feel like I can kind of just jump and spin. That's what actually is opening my hip. And the analogy I like to give people when they're trying to work on that is if I took a bungee cord and wrapped it around my knee and hooked it to my bell hoop is going to pull me back, and that's going to pull this knee slightly in. And when this knee snaps back, that pulls the hip through. So I'm not thinking about spinning. I'm actually thinking about pushing. And again, and that's where when we talked about the trail hand being more cover on top, we're pushing down. So we need to be pushing up. And the interesting thing was when I did this with the laser myself was I actually felt like my elbow kind of went into my back pocket, which would be, again, that arm linkage is going to be behind the seam. So if you're more of a cover golfer and you're trying to get your elbow in front of your body, usually you're going to kind of bail it out high right and not be able to be able to control the golf ball. And then vertical pressure, arm max pressure is going to be typically right around where left arm is parallel to the ground. So you got upper core cover golfer, front post here, mid core here, low core here. And I always thought you actually had to peak at impact. So it goes to show you what happens in 8 years of learning things. So things that we find with errors, we're going to get into the weight stays into the back foot. Why? Well, got two reasons. Number one, if I go into my reverse tilt, my weight's in my back foot, I'm not going to be able to push off of that. It's going to be really hard to go from this angle to this angle. My body's not going to be patient enough. And usually when I do that, my weight is on the outer edge of my shoe. I'm not going to be able to push off my pinky toe or be able to push off my ball, my foot. And the other part is, again, if you are a front post player and you get back here, for some reason, we just can't figure out how to shift. So if you have trouble getting to your left side and shifting your weight, you might want to try it again. Like I love this drill where I go down in and just push up out. It's one of my favorite drills for a front post player. Steep angle down. Again, that's coming from the spin. I'm getting this way. The forearm is going to have a big influence on the shaft action. So if I want to shallow the shaft, that elbow kicking down and in is going to help shallow the shaft. Again, for me, I'm shallowing the shaft by getting my elbow back and behind. That's going to keep the club back and behind me. It's kind of hard to see, but I got these shafts down on the ground. I'm trying to get this angle down this yellow line. I'm trying to picture coming down that yellow line. You see how my club face is or my club shaft is parallel to that yellow line. The yellow line is what we call the angle of approach. Now, what's interesting about the angle of approach is that kind of dictates the path of the club. So when we see someone coming over the top, the club is outside the hands. Guess where the butt of the club is? Butt of the club's pointing to the left. Well, that club's going to release and go left. Path is going left. So if you want to work on your path, this is actually a really good place to check the club path because that angle of the club has to match that yellow line. Again, it's coming down probably at a 330 angle. They converge right around that low point. Coming in this way. And again, I like to do this, release down, up and around. So again, that's another great drill, working on how we're coming down, where the club is if we're working on club path. We got the pump down drill. The thing with the pump down drill, I would just be very I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's out of Minnesota, and he used the term freezer drills. And I really like that term because it gave me the idea where it's like, hey, like I want to go up to the top. I want to freeze and I want to feel where I am. I want to feel where the weight is in my feet. I want to feel where my arm is. I want to feel where the pressure of the club is, right? I want from down. I want to feel where that club is. I want to feel where my pressure is. And again, and where it is in my left foot, right? So if I'm just doing pump drills and just doing this, I'm not really training anything. But if I can come down and I can come into this position might be 100th of a second in the golf swing. I don't even know, right? Thousandths of a second. But if I hold that for 10 seconds, that's a lot of practice. But for me, when I'm doing this pump drill, and again, I think you watch Rory, he does this where he's like kind of like pulling, he's got his hand on the shaft, he's kind of like pulling it down. Okay. That pump drill, I think, again, pressure point number 3, our pointer finger, is keeping this club up. So that club is that's what's keeping this thing up here. So when I'm going up to the top and I'm keeping that club up, this is what's keeping this thing back. And this just, again, this doesn't want to stay there. It's just going to release and just snap down into impact. So when we go through, that's where we get all of this power. Now, the one thing that I love, and again, like I would always tell people when they make their practice swing, they say the practice swing is always great and the real swing is different because the ball's there. And I'm like, well, I'd always say, well, in your practice swing, you're making a swing, right? And then in the real swing, you're trying to hit the ball. And Mike Romatowski, I'll give him credit because, again, I don't know if he came up with it or if he heard it from somewhere, but he used this phrase. He said, the destination changes. So I want you to think about where your destination is. If my destination in my practice swing is my follow through, that's going to look very different if my destination is the golf ball. So he talks about speed out front, and kind of we're going to get more into this when we start talking speed and drivers and stuff. But where you're trying to get to, again, the ball gets in the way. Low point is, again, under my left shoulder because geometrically, my left shoulder is the center of the circle. And yes, the golf swing is not a perfect circle because my left shoulder is moving. I understand that. We can all agree that, but if I didn't do that, but it resembles a circle. And when I come back, that lowest point of that swing is under my left shoulder. That's where the divot happens. That's why a divot happens. We need to have a divot. We need to take the ground. So ladies, don't be afraid of hurting the grass. I tell people all the time, it's like a bad haircut. It grows back. It's okay. All right. So getting into impact. So again, going into a moment of truth. When we start looking at impact, we're going to grab these sticks here. I always hated how mine looked, but again, there's a reason why now. I understand it. But when we start looking at like a rear post golfer with that side under grip, what I think happens, okay, and this is me, this is not EA or Mike or anybody telling me this. It's just kind of, I'm not a biomechanist, but when a rear post golfer goes back into their backswing, I think their shoulders get a little flatter versus being tilted down. And the reason being is because that allows them to get the deepest shoulder turn, say down in their posture the best. Now, what would mess with that is if I get my weight too much up into my tiptoes at a dress. So again, usually a side under golfer tends to have their weight a little bit more back of the arch, not balls of the feet. So if you struggle with your balance, that is one of the biggest giveaways that you're a side under golfer in your rear post. So you need to get like way more like bend from the hip, get your weight back in the arch. But when we come into impact, I got my right forearm in line with the club. I got my left arm in line with the club. Again, I'm coming in this way. And what that's going to look like coming down, this is where I'm going to be, right? And we're trying to get here. We're trying to stay in this posture. But you can see where I'm not letting that break down. So this inline condition of my left arm in the golf club is really, really important. That's where the grip is important. So that side under, again, they stay into their posture the longest, their elbows the most pitched, which I always really wanted to have. But again, because I'm not a golfer, can never do it. And they tend to have their hips the most open. Now, why would their hips be more open? The tendency, because in my backswing, if I keep my knee bent, that kind of prevents my hips from turning a lot in the backswing. So if I have the same amount of time in my downswing as you do, if I go in and have my knee bent, that restricts my hip turn in the backswing. That gives me more time to get my hips open. Now, as an upper core and like more of a front post, I turn my hips more in the backswing. So therefore, I'm not going to have time to get my hips as open as, again, a rear post golfer might have. So there is, again, those are some tendencies that when we see on video, we're always trying to make the video camera happy. Just make sure that we're not trying to do too much. And again, like what we think is right. There might be a reason why your hips aren't open. So you got like a Bubba Watson, a Lexi Thompson. They're using a lot of verticals, right? They don't have a lot of hip opens at impact. Thank you. Appreciate who is that? Miss Vanessa. Thank you. Going through, and again, just the left leg. It was actually interesting. It was on a call this afternoon. And we were talking about foot flare. And again, so like when we started talking about all these different swing types, a rear post golfer tends to have a little bit more foot flare. I tend to have less foot flare. And again, what Mike talks about is the more I flare my foot, the more I delay my vertical push. So if you're a front post golfer, what you don't really want is you don't want your foot flared because you're going to delay when you push, which is affecting when your energy is getting transferred to the golf ball. So be careful with that. Again, we didn't really talk about shaftling, but again, shaftling, I always find is everybody wants too much shaftling. Let's just go off and say that, again, lag is important, but there's lag in a putt, there's lag in a chip, there's lag in a pitch. Lag is not necessarily this angle between my left arm and the golf club. That's a cocked wrist. Okay. Like I can have lag in a level wrist pitch shot right now. The lag is the pressure that is in my pointer finger. So when we talk about shaftling, shaftling's coming because of the club is lagging behind me, right? Like this thing is the caboose. My lower body is the engine, okay? My arms can't be the engine. They're in the middle of the train. So I'm coming in, and that's what's going to help create that shaftling, again, at impact and the hands slightly ahead. I love impact bags when this comes into play. And again, if you have an impact bag, Mr. Scott Monroe says put bubble wrap in there. He wants them hitting it nice and soft. I got towels in it because I don't want it to roll down the range. But I'm going to go up to the top of my swing. And again, I'm going to turn down in and push. You can see where I have that shaftling. Again, for our lag bag, we got like a little compression wedge here. It actually makes sure that my club face isn't open or too closed. While we're at that, this is my favorite part. This is the lag loop. We're going to hook the club to here. And again, so if I'm going to use my trail foot to push off, I'm going to drag the bag. You can see how that drags my hands. Just really trying to get my hands to feel ahead. Again, for some reason, golf machiners are kind of termed in golf, the industry as handle draggers. Well, I'd rather be a handle dragger than a handle flipper. But I'm not really dragging the handle. I'm lagging the handle. Again, there's so much pressure right now on that pointer finger when I'm doing that. So those are some really good things. If you got an impact bag, you can always kind of put it out in front of you too. This is one of my, we'll probably get into this in the next couple. is my left arm is straight, coming back. If I pull my arms down, I'm going to miss that bag every time because I'm going to chicken wing it. I get up to the top, I'm going to shift correctly. I should hit that bag really, really nice and solid. Again, you see that good extension. And I always like to give a little bit of a stretch right there with my right arm. And I always like to have my head kind of back. So I'm almost kind of feeling like I'm kind of looking back, kind of seeing the divot before I get through there. So, and that's going to be one of those drills that we can have for some homework. Again, side on, kind of getting back to the posture, because they're into the hand is on the back of the club. They are pushing a little bit more. So they're going to have a little bit more rotational, vertical push. Left hand trail foot's going to be slightly off the ground. And again, the right elbow is not going to be as pitched, but they still will have some bend in that trail elbow. Make sure we can get all this done because I'm taking too much and talking too much. Get impact for a cover golfer. We're not going to have our hips open as much. The more that a cover golfer tries to open the hips, the more that I hit it to the right. So if you hit it to the right, try and spin your hips. Try not to spin your hips. Try to push off your left foot more. And again, when we get into our what we call our follow through is where both arms are fully extended. It's going to be directly in front of the golf ball. And this is something that I'm watching for, again, if you videotape your own swing, watch where your arms are fully extended. So this is something that your body naturally wants to do. And again, unless you're chicken winging it. But if you're really out here, this is, again, more side under grip, more side cover or side on grip, side cover grip. Again, where the right arm is driving out. The right arm is helping that club face square up. And again, that left leg is posting the earliest. So again, common errors at impact. We got our wrist bend. Why are we doing that? Because we probably started down here, we started casting it in a little bit too early release. And again, trying to turn our hips too open. If I get up to the top and I'm trying to spin, that's going to be coming over, falling away from the target. I don't see that very often unless, again, like I go into that reverse tilt and then I kind of have to fall back. That reverse tilt's one, again, like get a mirror and just do some simple drills where you're just like trying to keep that head relatively centered and steady, right? Again, we did some Bob McDonald drills when we did, I think it was in week 2. Those are great drills to do for anybody. And again, trying to get weight in front of the foot. We get up into our tiptoes, we're not going to be able to use our body the right way. So making sure, again, balance, grip, pivot, those are all really important things. Again, right forearm I'm playing. Low point is under the shoulder. We kind of touched on that. Again, why? Because this is the center of a circle. So if I had a golf ball down here, I always want the club to strike the ground out in front of the golf ball. A great drill if you have a low point problem is lay a towel behind the ball and you're trying to catch the ball without striking the towel. That's a great drill. Again, that I honestly, the angle of approach drill kind of changed my life just because I'm coming in and I'm seeing this club on parallel to that yellow line. And from here, I'm just releasing that club. Again, we call this impact swivel. We're uncocking and rolling the hands and coming through up and around. So alignment stick drill, impact drill, impact fix. We did that a little bit. I'm going to use my block here. So this is going to be your homework. You can use the corner of a doorway. Get right up into here. And you see like how much stress is on the shaft there. So I'm not just pushing my hands. My hands don't do that. My body pulls my shoulder, which pulls the arm, which pulls the handle. Again, like I've heard people say, feel like you're pulling the grip off the club. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I have to do that by pushing up. So I'm pushing up out of that left leg and pushing off that right foot. So hopefully that works. See, I think that's almost what we got. Again, going through start down waggle, some homework for you. Again, working on the alignment stick drills. Again, never overestimate the importance of going through your routine and getting comfortable with that. Again, last week we talked about tracing the baseline with the laser or alignment stick. And checkpoint lasers are great from eyeline. And you got shadow and the mirror drills. I love, again, if I had to have a mirror, an impact bag, and alignment sticks, those would be my top three training needs that I would have. Lagmaster, of course, if I had to. Pick my favorite one. Again, I'm partial to it. But again, working on that homework. So basic stroke and acquired stroke. We touched that on that just a little bit, but I'm going to do it one more time. So again, basic stroke is about 2 feet back, 2 feet through. And all I'm trying to do is make sure that this left wrist is super flat, not bending. Okay. And again, like I'm doing this and I'm trying to get a feel for what's moving me. Right now, I feel my right hip moving me. Then we would go into acquired stroke. I'm going to go back up to where my right arm is parallel to the ground, coming through. So going through, and those are some great drills. I always have people warm up with that drill. Do it with like a pitching wedge or gap wedge, sand wedge. But again, if you're interested, what I would tell you is, again, I love teaching everybody. Doesn't matter. I feel I can do it in person, over the phone, on video. Golf Live provides some amazing abilities to teach someone from anywhere, just by using your phone. But again, I have some free stuff too. If you go into my library, I have a free video that goes through and talks about my 5 favorite drills. Check that out. And then if you go through, there's also a short game ebook in there. You really want to start to lower your scores. It always starts with the short game. But again, coming up, we have some golf schools. If you're interested, definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit more about what's going on with that. All you got to do is get there. Once you fly down there, we're covering we got an Airbnb, we're covering your golf, we got everything covered. All you got to do is fly down. So go check that out, clearandsimple.golf. More details there. Again, you can reach out to me. My phone number's on there. Call me anytime. Just try to make it before 9 o'clock so I don't get yelled at. But again, next week, we're going to start talking about, again, the sequencing and lag and trying, again, like delivering that, how we're going to try to really maximize that. Did a little bit of that tonight, but we're going to definitely get into that a lot more. And if you're interested in submitting some swings, happy to look at some swings, and we can talk about that next week too. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you want to catch up, you can always go back. Everything's back in starting from week 1 all the way from address and startup and grip. But thanks for joining. Again, love having you on, and we will see you next week.